guys, welcome to our review of The Invasion by Peadar Guilín, and we were really excited to get our hands on this sequel to The Call, which we absolutely loved.
I read it in a day.
Yeah, it's easy, but it's not forgettable in any sense.
Okay, so it's easy to read, but maybe not easy to digest, which is my throwback to his other book series about cannibals, because I go deep.
I was kind of a little disappointed when I heard it was only going to be a duology and not like a trilogy, but I'm like, you know what, it's the perfect ending, so. And
this is one of the very weird situations where I found that I liked the second book more than I liked the first book. I don't know why, I think this one was a lot like more tonally consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know you had other perspectives in the first one, but you got like 5 or 6 perspectives in the first one.
Because in the first one, all of the characters who get mentioned, you get every person who goes on a call, you get to see their call. Which kind of worked in developing like how like messed up the Greyland was, but it kind of like splintered it was less time that you spent with other your main character,
yeah.
Right? So this time you're pretty much confined to Nessa and Anto, and there are a few other calls that go on.
But it's very spread out as compared to the first one. I don't know, this one felt more like a fairy tale to me, because you have Nessa going on a journey, and she's going through this like mystical land, and she's got to defeat the bad guy at the end. Like, it's very kind of like a linear story for her.
And the writing style also kind of reminds you of someone telling you a story. Like, it's very kind of worn in a way. Like, he's told this story over and over and over and over and again, and knows when the beats are and when to like emphasize something, and that kind of makes it even more scary too, because it's just like, oh yeah, and then there was this big monster and it was made out of like shrieking human people, and it was just there, and you're just like, what? But that's what we're not focusing on. What's gonna happen when we like laser in on something, because I don't think I want to be there for that.
This book kind of starts pretty much right after the call happened and Nessa's been debriefed. The government is now aware there are traders who have made deals with Fairy to get out of the Greyland mostly unscathed. So who are they going to turn to as a likely traitor but Nessa, the girl on crutches, who everybody was like, there's no way this girl will survive it.
Yeah, and then there's also the fact that they gave, like, she didn't just survive, she was given, like, special abilities,
yeah, too. They, like, literally helped her survive as she got out of there. So it's really weird.
And so she gets pulled off of the bus and shuffled off to prison, where they go through interrogations.
Hey, is she lying?
Yeah, and she's actually locked in, like, the woman's ward, including the person who turned her in. One of the girls from the school who was like, yeah, no, there was this girl and she was on crutches and she totally survived, and she shouldn't have because she was on crutches.
But, of course, Nessa did survive. Honestly, it was like pure luck that she survived, because the only reason she did survive was because Connor had made a deal with the fairies, that he wanted to kill her. So it was like, had he not made that deal, had he not been so obsessed with her, she never would have made it out. Anyways, so there's one investigator who keeps like hounding her, and he eventually like realizes that she's telling the truth and she actually did survive, and he believes her, and she's just about to be released when the fairies like age an attack and make it look like she's definitely working with them.
Also worth mentioning in the prison is the crazy woman.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of alluded that she was like this like insane serial killer or something. This monster of a woman, but she's also like this great brilliant scientist, so they can't exactly get rid of her because, you know, there's only so many resources on this island, and so you gotta use what you can use. But she's constantly trying to break out of her cell.
Like, she stabs guards, she like gasses them.
Her entire cell is just like a death trap. And she wants Nessa because she wants to figure out what Nessa's abilities are.
And Nessa's like, I don't trust this bitch. Like, she's crazy.
I'm kind of sad that she was only like a small portion of the novel, because she was fascinating.
She really was, but she was also like terrifying at the same time.
It was kind of nice to have a human monster. Well, I mean, we had Connor in the first book, but like another kind of human monster.
Almost a fun human monster.
Yeah.
The prison guards like take a look at how the fairies were interacting with Nessa, and they're like, okay, this bitch is definitely working with the fairies. So we're gonna give her capital punishment, which in Ireland, where they're not wasting resources, is like, on a boat.
What Nessa realizes is that they've been shipping all of these people out into Fairy, and it's just basically fueling the fairies' war machine.
Yeah.
Like, giving them more resources to work with, like to make the gigantic monsters.
Yeah, because in the beginning there were like boatloads of people trying to escape thing, and so, you know, there's just like derelict ships there, and it's not good. Nessa ends up going through the mist, and she comes out on the other side, and the fairies are waiting for her. She's like, oh shit, I have to escape them, but unfortunately she can't. And so when they catch up to her, she's like, listen, as long as you don't screw with me, I promise that I will go see King Dagna.
And none of them are like, oh, we can't hurt you. Like, we can't hurt you because we made the bargain with Connor. Like, we can't touch you. We can only kind of like herd you in the direction.
Yeah, like,
woo!
You're gonna go there eventually, and thank you for making that promise. That's really important.
What I found really interesting was the fact that I was thinking about like war movie theory of how you spend you're trained to do a specific thing. Her entire life she's been building up to go to the Greyland, and how she gets out of the Greyland and she's like, never again, I'm done. I never have to go back, it's over. But now that she's back, she just falls into the survival routine just so naturally because she's built for this.
It's all she knows, basically. But on the other side, you also have Anto. The one thing he's been counting on is that he and Nessa now get to be together because they've both survived, and, you know, the world may be fucked up, but they can have a bunch of kids and they'll have a farm and live peacefully and, you know, just have a good life. But now that Nessa's gone and she's been, like, literally executed as a traitor, he's like freaking out. The government realizes that he's gonna have a problem with Nessa leaving, so they kind of just like draft him into the army. And so he's there for a little while, but he ends up back at the school as the fairy invasion hits.
I really liked his perspective and like his very fractured mental state, because he makes some decisions that you don't like, but you totally and completely understand. Like, he's just so traumatized, and he starts thinking about his arm like as a separate entity, like they've given me a weapon and it wants to kill.
It was like some Telltale Heart shit.
Yeah,
like,
it was nuts.
So he's basically just like on this journey trying to protect this group of school children that was like left, because most of the parents kind of pulled their kids out of school after the fiasco in the last book. But so him and a couple of teachers and one of the girls who was following Connor and a couple of other kids, they're all like trying to get back behind human lines, but there's some shit in the way.
I think the cleverest thing that he does in this book, and it started out really jarring, is that they run into this kid, and this kid is just like contemporary speaking at them, like just spewing memes. And I'm just like, what is this? This just, it's so jarring because nothing else in this book dates this book.
Like, if they're all just having like a conversation, he's like, what up, dude? Like,
and it's just like, it's so weird, and you're just like, I don't get this. And then you find out that this is one of the guys who made a deal on his call, and he's probably one of the first people ever to have been called, and what he asked for was eternal youth. And so Anto like has this moment where he realizes, like, holy shit, this is like someone who's like our grandparents' age.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's so creepy.
Yeah, that was really creepy.
It was so cool. I was just, because I started out like being, what are you doing? And I'm like, the payoff is so worth it.
Yeah, it really is. I love that moment. And then he's like, I'm the new king of Ireland. And the fairies are just like, sure, you're the new king of Ireland. Go for it. And it does not work out for him.
So Nessa, while she's in the Greyland, she's going along, she meets this little fairy who just kind of like hangs out and wants to eat eyes.
Like, he used to be a Catholic priest or something, and he was a horse for a while, but then they decided to turn him into this fairy instead.
So he just kind of like hangs out, she gives him eyes, and they just kind of survive together, and like she doesn't trust him.
No. But like, she's grateful for the companionship.
He teaches her how to, like, what she can eat to survive, even though as she eats food and fairy, you know, you're not supposed to, and it changes her, and so she starts to kind of like look Fae-ish. She's like, okay, like I said I would go and see him eventually, the king, but I'm just gonna take the roundabout way.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to get away, and the fairies are like, no, go,
well, the fairies are like, let us help you, and she's like, fuck you, no. And so, like, eventually they're like, ah, well, she's gonna get there eventually.
And they just
like,
kind of like watch her.
There's this one heartbreaking moment though where, what do they call her?
She runs into one of the girls who's on a call, and she recognizes her, but the girl realizes that she looks fae-ish and just like runs away from her because obviously she's a traitor.
And then so like this girl was with Anto, and so when she gets back from her call, she's like, I saw Nessa there and she looks fae, so like obviously she has turned traitor, because why else would she be there? And this like wrecks Anto's world. But it was like an interesting moment because the fairies were like using her as like a horror show. They're like, yes, run that way, run into like the promised or the broken or the whatever. Yes, go see her. And like she's just like, yeah, she's absolutely traumatized from seeing her friend like slowly turn into a fairy.
Okay, so the big thing at the end that I kind of called it.
Yeah.
How the whole like, okay, only Connor is the one who's allowed to kill her. So what does the king do? He gets his leg bone and he's like, I'm gonna beat you to death with Connor's leg. Oh!
It's not even his leg, it's like his thumb or something. It's like the biggest bit they could find of him is like his finger or something like that, because mostly he's like turned to ash in the fire. So they're like, we're gonna like he puts it on the end of a spear and is like, gonna poke you with it. No dead human king is gonna stop us from taking our revenge.
Because what Nessa realizes is that the fairies run on promises, and by making promises with people, they're strengthening the bond between the two worlds.
So yeah, like when people come from the call, you know, they're like, kill a bunch of them, but some of them do just escape, and then a bunch of them
make deals.
Yeah.
So she's like, okay, if I can wreck this big deal, because this is the big deal, the one that Connor made, if I can end that, then we're good. Then like the worlds will be separate.
And they will start moving apart from each other because all these promises are what's keeping them together.
And so she sees the big gate, and that's also Anto's basically on the other side of the gate. And so he gets in, and she manages to break the gate down, and
like
boom.
Destroys the Connor's bone, and just that's it. It's the end.
And what's really kind of cool is that there's like the fairies that are left on the human side are stuck there, and they lose their ability to be, they're not immortal anymore because they're in the human world. And so people are like, oh, a fairy, and they just start like,
they're like, open season, boys!
So the book actually picks up in the epilogue years upon years upon years later, where the next generation of children have been told like the kind of almost sanitized version of the fairy stories
and like the horrors that they went through.
But fairies are kind of like mythical creatures again, and they live in the forest, and people run into them, and they're nowhere near as powerful as they were. This character goes to visit grave sites. Her granddaughter's telling her all these stories about one of her friends who gets lost in the woods, and two fairies helped her out, and one of them had a really big arm, and one of them was walking with sticks.
And so you're like, oh, it's Nessa and Anto.
They got out.
So the big problem is that at the final battle, Nessa realizes that because she needed to eat, so she's been eating these like the grubs and roots and whatever, but it's been turning her fae, and she can't go through that door even though it's right there. So she's like, I'm stuck. Like, this is it. Number one, I need to end this, but number two, there's no going home again. So Anto sees her on the other side, and he's just like so like in love with her that he's like, you know what? I'd rather be over there with her than over here without her. And so he runs out, and when she finally actually like breaks the final promise, the door closes and they're stuck on the other side. And so you're like, that's it. All in all, like, I really enjoyed this book. Like, I really enjoyed the entire series. It's so different from anything that you've read before. It's spooky, it's creepy, it will make you'll remember it.
I wouldn't even say spooky, I'd just say downright horrifying.
Yeah. These are like the nightmares you have when you're like fevered out and you're watching a horror movie.
Yeah. Just big screaming monstrosities of just hundreds of humans packed together, like, God, you know, just like arms where the fingers are like 10 people, like really, it's just, that was what, because I was reading it, right, and I got to that point and I'm like, okay, he's topped himself.
So that was our review of The Invasion. We really liked it. We recommend you read the series, and if you've read it, tell us what you think of it, or tell us what we talked about that sounds really interesting to you guys, and we will see you guys next time. Bye!